Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's word study. Today we're going to be talking about evolution, or as I like to put it, evolution. It's pretty amazing when you consider that even though it's the theory of evolution, all the school systems teach it as though it's the fact or science of evolution. It's not a fact, it's not a science, it's a theory. And even though this theory has fallen apart at the seams in so many ways throughout the years, the school systems insist on teaching it as fact, and a lot of our younger ones are really being deceived in some very, very heavy ways, because basically it's getting them to adopt the idea that there is no creator. Forget about Elohim, forget about Abba Father Yahweh, forget about his beloved Son Yeshua, forget about an indwelling Ruach HaKodesh, his Spirit. In fact, it teaches them to have a lack of concern for all living things in an odd sort of way. The theory of evolution it's in trouble. It's always been in trouble. It's an indisputable fact that the ongoing growth of biological knowledge continues to produce evidence that contradicts this theory called evolution. Darwin's Black Box, a book by Michael J. Behe or something. And Evolution, A Theory in Crisis by Michael Denton are two books that clarify this phenomenon that, evolution's in trouble. It doesn't make sense. I have links to these books for you in the More Info section beneath this video if you're interested in checking them out. But there's always been a group of highly distinguished scientists with impeccable credentials and no religious motivations who have declared that evolution has never been proven and that it is nothing more than a theory. Now, the first big problem with evolution is that the fossil record increasingly does not support it. The theory of evolution claims that there once existed a whole series of successive forms of the various organisms which are alive today, and that they supposedly changed by infinitesimal amounts with each generation as they evolved into the present varieties. So, the fossil record should show these gradual changes, but it doesn't. Instead, fossil records show the sudden emergence of new species coming out of nowhere, fully complete with all their characteristics and not changing over time. This is popularly known as the problem of the missing link, and it's massively systematic across different species and time periods. Strangely enough, this problem is getting worse for evolutionists, not better. If humans evolved stage by stage from the ape, then why is it that we still see apes on the earth? And since there are still apes on the earth, why is it that there are no existing animal forms that show the intermediate developmental stages that were supposed to occur between the ape and the human? I mean, if we evolved from the ape in intermediate stages, you would see some of those on the earth. You only have the ape and then the human. There's no logic going on, and yet people buy it because they're taught to buy it. The more we investigate, the more we keep finding the same forms over and over again, never the intermediates. Now, another development that's undermined evolution is the spread of computers into evolutionary biology. Basically, computers have shown that the neat evolutionary trees that get computed are in fact based on imaginary relations of similarity and difference, which are due more so to the human mind's tendency to perceive patterns than they are to the raw biological data itself. And there's yet another problem with evolution that continues to get worse. And that is that it remains incapable of explaining how anything could evolve that doesn't make biological sense when it is incomplete. For example, there is one classic illustration among many others that we could point out, and that is the wings of birds. What good could only half a wing be? This is a problem that the theory of evolution has promised to solve for a very long time, but never has. And another point to make has us looking to the Shamayim and the planet Mercury. Mercury is a planet of extremes. The side of the planet that faces the sun reaches a temperature of about 430 degrees Celsius. That's 806 degrees Fahrenheit, which is more than enough to melt lead, while the dark side is a frigid negative 170 degrees Celsius or negative 274 degrees Fahrenheit. Talk about cold. Scientists have discovered that Mercury has the highest density of all the known planets other than Earth. In fact, Mercury is so dense that it's thought to have an iron core occupying some 75% of its mass. This incredible density has generated much agitation and confusion with evolutionists who believe that Mercury cannot possibly be anywhere near as dense as it truly is. That is to say, they refuse to accept the truth about it because they would have to admit that their theory, and by the way, their entire life's work, is a complete joke. After decades of struggle, most of them have given up and have admitted that Mercury's high density cannot be explained by, and in fact completely destroys, evolution's theory of slow and gradual development. And so, what did they do about that? Instead of admitting the fallacy of their theory, they propose a long ago catastrophic collision. And what is their evidence for this theoretical collision? They have none, except that Mercury would otherwise disprove their theory and their life's work, so there was another explosion. Yeah, that's it. There was an explosion. You know, it reminds me of people who were locked up in a cult. They're brainwashed. And if you try to show them the truth of the lie that they are swallowing, they just block it out because it would destroy such a large portion of their reason for existing that they just, it's like, no, not listening, la, 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 la. They go into that odd mode. Anyway, little old Mercury gives evolutionists another hard pill to swallow. For a planet to be billions of years old and still have a magnetic field, there must be fluid motions within the planet's core. That is, the core itself must be molten. But as one evolutionist says, Mercury is so small that the general opinion is that the planet, in effect its core, should have frozen solid eons ago. And so, according to evolutionists, the core cannot be molten, and therefore evolutionary theories must conclude that Mercury cannot have a magnetic field. But, oh well, it does. Even they admit that any attempt to include Mercury in their evolutionary models can only doom their models to failure. And, once again, their life's work, what do they do about that? It's over with. So we see that this tiny, seemingly insignificant planet creates an enormous stumbling block for those who wish to deny the creator of all things. Oh, let's look at 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27. Truly, Elohim has chosen the foolish things of the world to put to shame the wise. Elohim has chosen Mercury to put to shame the evolutionists. And Romans chapter 1, verse 20 also fits. Since the creation of the world, his invisibilities have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, like the planet Mercury, both his everlasting power and mightiness, so that no one can ever have an excuse for rejecting him. Once again, Romans 1:20. The Father says that since the creation of the world, his invisible qualities are clearly seen and understood from the things that he's created. His everlasting power and his mightiness is clearly seen and understood. You look up at the sky on a starlit night. It's staggering to look at. And he has done it in such a way that no one can deny it, and therefore no one will ever have an excuse for rejecting him when it comes to Judgment Day. The next verse in Romans 1, verse 21 says, because although they knew Elohim and did not esteem him as Elohim, nor did they give thanks, and rather became vain in their reasonings, their undiscerning hearts became darkened. Eyes that don't see, ears that don't hear, hearts that don't understand. And then a bit further in the chapter, there's more about such people. Romans chapter 1 still. Verses 25 and 26 says, they changed the truth of Elohim into a falsehood. They worshipped and served what was created instead of worshiping and serving the Creator, Elohim. And because of that, Elohim gave them over to degrading passions, such as homosexuality. They were born that way? No. I have a video on homosexuality. Check it out in the search tool on my channel. No, they were given over to it because of denying Elohim as the creator of all things. To believe in evolution is to call Elohim a liar. It is to blaspheme the Ruach HaKodesh. It is to deny Yahweh, Abba, Father. And it means to choose to make one's eternal existence to be in the outer darkness, complete separation from the Creator of heaven and earth forevermore. To live throughout all of eternity without hope, in utter despair and complete, non-stop misery and agony. Does that describe you? Do you want to be your own God and reject the Creator of all things in favor of having things your own way? As if you even could. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, Elohim created the Shamayim and the earth, the heavens and the earth. There we see the very first mention of the word created. And that word in the original Aramaic Hebrew is barah. Strong's number H1254. It's spelled Beit Resh Aleph. Beit is a picture of a house. It has to do with Yeshua. It has to do with family. Resh is a picture of a man's head. It has to do with headship and what your thoughts are on. And then Aleph, picture of an ox head. It has to do with Abba Father's strength and power. It has to do with being yoked to Him. Bara, created, means that Elohim created everything, seen and unseen, through His Son Yeshua, in accordance with His thoughts and desires for a family. And further, everything He created, seen and unseen, is yoked to Him, moves and operates according to His will and none other. You look at John, that's Yochanan, chapter 1, verse 3 says, all things were made through Him, Yeshua, and without Him not even one single thing came to be that ever existed. Nothing, not one single thing. Colossians, Colossim, chapter 2, verse 8. See to it that no one takes you captive through philosophy and empty deceit, like the theory of evolution, according to the tradition and doctrines of men, according to the elementary matters of the world, and not according to Messiah. In the book of Proverbs, that's Mishlei, chapter 3, verse 5, we see, trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. We live in a world of darkness and confusion, my friends. Our understanding is faulty and changes from moment to moment. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and never lean on your own understanding, or certainly not on anyone else's. Matthew, Yahu, chapter 24, verse 4, Yeshua said, take heed that no one leads you astray. Have you been led astray by someone, like your own educational institution, teaching you that there is no Creator, when in their hearts they know that's a lie? Can you really believe that our world came into being all by itself? That your own very unique, one-of-a-kind personality, which is unlike any other human being who ever lived or who ever will live, do you think you just happened? There are somewhere between 7 and 8 billion people living on the planet right now. I wonder what the number would be if you could tally up how many souls have lived since the beginning of time until now. I'm sure it's an astronomical number. And you look at that number and consider the fact that our Creator only made one of you. You are absolutely unique and unlike any other human being who has ever walked on this planet. Your fingerprints cannot be matched. The color of your eyes and the design in your pupils cannot be matched. The tone of your voice, one of a kind. Not just happened? I mean, can you honestly find any logic or rationality in that idea? It didn't just happen. You were designed. Have you actually considered and thought about the absurdity of what this theory called evolution is asking you personally to accept and believe? Are you really willing to gamble with your life, and your life meaning for all of eternity, to either be with Elohim or completely separated from Him for trillions and trillions of years into your future? Think about that. Does not this subject deserve your own personal and diligent consideration? Educational institutions are teaching that first there was nothing, and then nothing exploded. Are you buying that? Because if you are, you need to do a little self-examination. That's what they teach. First, there was nothing. Nothing. And then it exploded. Nothing exploded. I ain't buying it. You'd be crazy to buy that. Can you make any sense out of that? Nothing exploded. I just had a big meal. What'd you eat? Nothing. I just spoke for hours. What did you say? Nothing. Well, that is possible, and evolutionists do it all the time. Life being born from non-life, as the theory of evolution proposes, is absolutely absurd. This theory teaches that energy, such as heat or light, can occasionally create new life. Yet our entire food industry depends on the fact that the theory of evolution is false, knowing that it is. This jar of peanut butter contains matter, which, right now, I'm exposing to light and heat. You can see I've eaten quite a bit of it already. It's organic. But look, there's no new life inside. It's just what was there. I'm exposing it to light and heat. There's no new life inside this jar. And we will never find new life inside this jar unless an outside life force, like a fly, contaminates it and bacteria grows. People have conducted this experiment over 1 billion times a year with all sorts of food products for more than 100 years, and no one has ever found new life in any jar or can. Ever. When you consider the most eloquent designs imaginable, a leaf, a feather, human DNA, can you honestly say you're looking at a design of randomness? There is nothing random about DNA. There is nothing random about a leaf or a feather. Teaching such absurdity to students is nothing short of teaching them to develop a complete lack of respect for our Creator, Abba, Father, Yahweh, and His beloved Behe Yeshua, as well as teaching them a complete lack of concern or care for any living thing, person, or animal. Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29. The secret things belong to Yahweh our Elohim, but the things which are revealed belong to us and to our children forever, that we may do all of the words of Elohim's teaching. Ecclesiastes, one of my all-time favorites when it comes to science. Ecclesiastes chapter 8, verse 17. Then I saw all the work of Elohim, that man cannot discover anything about his work that is done under the sun, because no matter how much a man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. And even more than that, though a wise man thinks and claims that he knows, the truth is, he will never be able to understand the mighty work of Elohim. Science, reiterates this scripture, giving evidence for it year after year after year. You watch these science shows, documentaries and whatnot, and they're always like, well, we used to think this, but now we know better. Now we know this is truth. And then in a year or so, they'll be like, well, we used to think that, but, we learned better. Now we know. They always say, we know. They always talk about things that they don't know as though they're facts. I can't watch those shows without talking to my television screen and yelling at it. Oh, that's what you said last year, and now you're saying you were wrong, but now you know this. I mean, they're always doing that. Yahweh knew this, and He put it in His Word. The truth is that they will never be able to understand His mighty work. Do you think the word of Elohim is a bunch of garbage made up by men of old to suit their own needs? Today's ocean liners all make their journeys on oceanic highways known as planktons. One such highway, known as the Cromwell Current, travels more than 13,000 miles through the Pacific Ocean. And there's another one called the Florida Current, which maintains more than 4,000 times the flow of the Mississippi River. This information was sitting in the Father's Word for more than 2,000 years before it was discovered in the 1800s, when Dr. Matthew Fontaine Maury was reading Psalm 8, verse 8, and decided to take Elohim's word literally. He searched for these paths of the seas that are mentioned there in Psalm 8. And not only did he discover them, but he changed the course of history in the process. More than 3,400 years ago, Elohim gave instructions in the book of Numbers, chapter 19, verses 17 and 18, for washing with fresh water, using hyssop, and the ashes of a red heifer. Fresh running water doesn't hold germs. The ashes of a red heifer contains lye, which kills germs, and hyssop contains antibacterial agents. It wasn't until 1890 that scientists discovered germs for the first time. Before that, surgeons never washed their hands. and the number of deaths occurring in hospitals were extremely high because of infection. Medical science has only recently discovered that when an infant is 8 days old, exactly 8 days old, there is more vitamin K and prothrombin present in the blood than on any other day or at any other time, which means there's a much better healing process available, faster blood coagulation, and less pain during and after the procedure for circumcision. But Elohim's word revealed this fact over 3,900 years ago in Genesis, Bereshith, chapter 17, verse 12. Today, scientists know that entropy, also known as unavailable energy, is constantly increasing, and that the universe is in a state of continual decay, corruption, waxing old. The earliest public knowledge about this idea was proven by Rudolf Clausius around 1850. But it was there in the Father's Word as early as 2,300 years ago in Psalm 102, verses 25 and 26. And over 1,900 years ago in Romans chapter 8, verse 21. At the time the Scriptures were penned, everyone believed that the earth was flat. But look at how Isaiah describes the circle of the earth in Isaiah 40:22. And previously, prior to that, they thought the earth was a shell sitting on the back of a turtle, which was perched on the back of an elephant, or that it was hanging from a rope, or resting on the shoulders of the Greek god Atlas. With that kind of mindset, could man have been the author of Job chapter 26, verse 7? In Job chapter 38, verses 31 and 32, Elohim asks Job if he could bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, if he is capable of holding Pleiades together. Well, as it turns out, we now know that the 7 stars of Pleiades are truly a grouping of 250 suns that are all traveling together in one common direction. And after all, Elohim was saying to Job, well, I can hold them together. Then Elohim asks Job if he can loose the bands of Orion, referring to the 3 stars, which appear to be fixed in a rigid straight line and form what is called the belt of Orion. Well, we have now discovered that these 3 stars are not fixed and are being loosed, if you will, and will eventually move out of their positions. Elohim was telling Job, I can move them. Next, Elohim asked Job if he's capable of guiding Arcturus, as if to ask if he could possibly do anything to change the direction of Arcturus. It's always been believed that Arcturus was a fixed star. But we now know that Arcturus is in fact a runaway star traveling at 257 miles per second, and the combined attraction of every star we know of could not create enough force to turn Arcturus in its path. And after all, Elohim was saying to Job, I can. In Zechariah, chapter 14, verse 12, some 2,800 years ago, the prophet Zechariah describes something that certainly had no relationship to anything he could have known himself: the precise effects of a neutron bomb. According to Revelation, chapter 11, verse 9, the book of Chazon, for 3.5 days, Every nation on earth will be watching a particular event happening in Jerusalem. This is yet future to happen during the tribulation period on earth. But no man living in the days that those words were originally penned could have possibly imagined how this could occur. In fact, this is an event that could only take place after cable and satellite television and the internet became realities. No one knew what that verse meant until recently. Now it's kind of obvious. Both Psalm 22, verse 16, and Zechariah chapter 12, verse 10 mention Yeshua being pierced. And yet, crucifixion involving the piercing of hands and feet was not even remotely known as a form of execution until 700 years after Psalm 22 was written and 800 years after Zechariah was written. Yeshua cried out from the stake when he was being crucified, "O Elohim, my Elohim, why have you forsaken me?" He wasn't asking the question. Did you know he was quoting the prophecy of his crucifixion from Psalm 22, which reveals the many details of his crucifixion? The conclusion of all this, my friends, is Elohim's word is true. The theory of evolution is a satanic lie. And that's our study for this week. As always, I hope and I pray that this study is a major beracha to you and yours. I hope and I pray that this video will open the eyes, the ears, and the hearts of anyone out there who may watch or listen, who thinks that evolution is a fact and that we have no creator. Anyway, Abba willing, I'll see you here next week with another study. Until then, shalom, my friends.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.